So here's a question. Now, both of you have kind of, Cynthia and Emily, you've talked about the CSSA and the role that it's played in sort of importing transnational repression from the People's Republic of China into American college campuses where your groups operate. And the State Department in 2020 issued a report specifically about the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, on campus, and how the CSSA was created specifically to extend this influence around the world. Has there been any push on your part or among allied organizations or by policymakers to have the CSSA designated under the Foreign Agent Registration Act? And as a follow-up to that, has there been any effort or programming to basically counter this idea that the PRC has a monopoly on Chinese identity on campus?
For the first question, the very first thing I thought of was recently there's been some statewide investigations. I know of at least one state that is going after like CCP influence within their borders, and they are currently under the process of trying to get the CSSAs and other CCP proxies within their borders relabeled and properly defined as foreign agents. I think your second question, sorry, can you repeat the second one again about Chinese identity?
Yeah, so there's this, one of the ways that they seem to be trying to silence Falun Dafa and any dissident organization like Atheni or whatever on campus seems to be this accusation of racism. And is there any effort to talk about how the PRC has no monopoly on Chinese identity? For example, is there programming talking about how Confucianism is actually abused as a concept by the CCP and how the CCP actually derives heavily from ancient Chinese legal theory, legalism, the legalist school? Has there been any efforts to discuss that, sort of raise that awareness? And this opens up to anybody. Emily can chime in too.
The first thing I thought of actually was that it's kind of, let's just say, like a jump in logic to say that Falun Gong is anti-China and racist because it's a spiritual meditation based in Buddhist belief. It's practiced, like Levi said earlier, in over 100 countries. So it just doesn't really fit the square hole that the CCP is really trying to fit it in that sense, just because it's like translated in so many languages, and it really is a worldwide spiritual faith. As for the, I guess, education part of it or like awareness part of it, I don't know of any at the moment. I know there's a lot of just like groups that oppose the CCP in general, like dissent groups that are trying to raise more awareness about like the culture of China before the Chinese Communist Party and trying to really instate that, you know, China is not the CCP and that its people really have, you know, their own values that they hold dear, that are not atheist, that are not communist, in that sort of way, and just trying to separate the two labels, unlike, right, trying to undo what the CCP has tried to do, which is the CCP is China, the Communist Party will be forever. Yeah.
Right. So here's a question for Cynthia and Emily, but also Grady, and I have a few questions for Grady as well. On campus, has Falun Dafa wound up becoming a rallying point at all for other dissidents from China who are not Falun Gong practitioners, and more broadly, nationally or internationally? Cynthia, this is probably a question for you. Has Falun Dafa talked to other religious groups that are persecuted in China, such as any Muslim groups or Catholic organizations, for example? Has there been any collaboration bilaterally in that sense or multilaterally?
I'll let Emily answer first since I feel like I've been.
No, that's fine. Not that I have known of, and I don't know if that's partially because many groups might feel unsafe doing so. And sort of to answer your question before about has there been any attempt to sort of educate people on that the CCP and pro CCP groups sort of use racism as a shield to deflect from any criticism. It's so hard. Like I mentioned, there's such a knee-jerk negative reaction. When people say, you're being racist towards Chinese people, and even in one of the sort of complaints, one of the students said, I didn't watch the film, but it's exactly, this racist. The Trump administration, it's exactly what the Trump administration says, like be racist towards Chinese people. And I was like, so you're admitting that you didn't watch the film, and yet you're complaining, about this film and about this promotion, and specifically saying that it's political, that it's, racist. And I'm Chinese, the director of the film was Chinese. And I even tried to separate out, I specifically said, I was like, I'm Chinese. I'm very proud to be Chinese. I'm not here to criticize China. I'm not here to criticize Chinese people. I'm criticizing what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. But there's such a conflation of the two. And I think the Chinese Communist Party purposely does that to deflect from any criticism. They purposely hide behind this shield of, Chinese Communist Party is China. So if you're basically criticizing the Chinese Communist Party, you are criticizing Chinese people. And so again, there's such a negative knee-jerk reaction to racism. And of course, it's understandable why. No one wants to associate with racists, right? But I feel like that sort of, they use that as protection to not receive criticism. And I think, it's scary to stand up to such, loud voices when you're a minority on campus. It's hard to do that activism. Just holding a film screening event can get you attacked for like a month. I think a lot of students understandably may not want to subject themselves to that kind of treatment, and would understandably rather just, sort of lay low and just do what they need to do as students, and not sort of work through all this and, field all these comments and personal attacks about racism, about political, agenda and stuff like that.